Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm John M. Hawkins. The show is called My Strategy, and we're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're very happy to be here with you today on this Saturday. My Strategy episodes are on Saturdays. They're live, and they are at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We'd love to get your thoughts, so send us an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com. That's talk@johnmhawkins.com. And speaking about getting your thoughts, today we're going to be talking about when thoughts become a reality. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how thoughts can impact our reality. I'm going to talk about the impact of negative thoughts and stress, how proper thinking can help us, the strategy of doing one thing at a time as a result, in comparison to doing multiple things at once, and also give you some tips for developing your strategy. Well, happy to be here today. Saturday, for me, is the day I choose to reflect, but keep in mind that any day is a good day for you to assess your strategy. The My Strategy radio show is growing. We're on iHeart, iTunes, Player FM, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and many other digital platforms. So if you'd like to listen to a podcast of this or go listen to any of the other episodes, you can find them out there in the digital universe. You can find me on most social media platforms. My Twitter handle is @HawkinsJohn, and my website is johnmhawkins.com. So Twitter, once again, is HawkinsJohn, and website is johnmhawkins.com. And just like anything in life, we need to have a strategy to help us reach our goals, because the best laid plans don't always work. And this week I am looking for stories around thoughts becoming a reality. Do you have a good example, perhaps a tip or a trick? If you do, send it to talk@johnmhawkins.com. Or if you'd like to be on the show, please feel free to reach out and we can discuss some options for you. Love to have you on and continue the conversation with regard to personal development. And then we do, from time to time, have some giveaways. So if you go check my website at johnmhawkins.com or the Twitter @HawkinsJohn, you can see what current giveaways we've got going on. All right, so this week we're going to be talking about thoughts becoming a reality, how thoughts can impact our reality, impact of negative thoughts and stress, how proper thinking can help us. We're going to help you put together a strategy. And I thought a lot of this was pertinent because we are dealing with this whole COVID-19, and as we are into this new normal, this new reality, it can be very difficult for us to transition, and at least from my perspective, it's hard for me as well. So as we think about personal development, how do we go about getting through this? I thought this might be a good topic for us this week. So we're going to be talking about how thoughts become a reality. In uncertain times, we can become single-focused and start to think about things that might not be as positive as they could be. We're going to talk a little bit about how those negative thoughts can increase our stress, and they can impact our immune system and potentially get us in a weakened condition. And in this current environment, we want to be as healthy and as strong that we can be. So we're going to talk a little bit about how thinking good thoughts can help you not only from a physical perspective, but also help get you into that proper mindset. We want to avoid all those negative thoughts, which are landmines and potentially could hurt us. We're going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of doing things sequentially versus juggling multiple tasks, and we're going to help you develop your strategy. So I want to talk a little bit about how thoughts become your reality, and I have an article by Amy Morin, and she is a psychiatrist or psychologist, I believe, and psychotherapist, sorry, and she's written books on the subject, but she's got a good article here called "This is How Your Thoughts Become Your Reality," and she says, your mind is very powerful, yet if you're like most people, you probably spend very little time reflecting on the way you think. After all, who thinks about thinking? But the way you think about yourself turns into your reality. If you draw inaccurate conclusions about who you are, what you're capable of doing, you'll limit your potential. The links between thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Your thoughts are a catalyst for self-perpetuating cycles. What you think directly influences how you feel and how you behave. So if you think you're a failure, you'll feel like a failure. then you'll act like a failure, which reinforces your belief that you must be a failure. She said she sees this happen all the time in her therapy office. Someone will come in saying, I'm not good enough to advance in my career. That assumption leads to feel discouraged and causes her to put in less effort. That lack of effort prevents her from getting a promotion, or someone will say, I'm really socially awkward. So when that individual goes to the social gathering, they stay in the corner by themselves. When no one speaks to them, it reinforces the belief that they must be socially awkward. Now, I understand it is a bit different given that we've got social distancing and we are trying to separate ourselves. But we can also get into some bad habits there. So we want to be cognizant of how our thoughts, what we're thinking on a daily basis becomes our reality. And it is extremely important for us during this time to be aware of this so that we can put some mitigating strategies in place. She goes on to say, reducing environmental impact is now a business. She says, your beliefs can be reinforced. Once you draw a conclusion about yourself, you're likely to do two things. Number one, you look for evidence that reinforces your beliefs and discount anything that runs contrary to your beliefs. So you've conditioned yourself to support this thesis, this statement, this thought that you've put out there. She said, someone who believes that the belief that they are a failure, for example, will view each mistake as proof that they're not good enough. When they do succeed at something, they'll chalk it up to luck. Consider for a minute that it might not be your lack of talent or lack of skills that are holding you back. Instead, it might be your beliefs that are keeping you from performing at your peak. Creating a more positive outlook can lead to better outcomes. Now, that's not to say that positive thoughts have magical, mystical powers, but optimistic thoughts lead to productive behavior, which increases your chances of a successful outcome. She says we need to challenge our conclusions. Take a look at the labels that you've placed on yourself. Maybe you've declared yourself incompetent, or perhaps you've decided that you are a bad leader. Remind yourself that you do not have to allow those beliefs to restrict your potential. Just because you think something doesn't make it true. So just because you think something doesn't make it true. The good news is you can change how you think. You can alter your perspective and change your life. She says she gives us some ways to challenge our beliefs. Look for evidence to the contrary. Take note of any time when your beliefs weren't reinforced. Acknowledging exceptions to the rule will remind you that your belief isn't always true. Challenge your beliefs. Perform behavioral experiments that test how true your beliefs really are. If you think you are not good enough, do something that helps you feel worthy. If you've labeled yourself too wimpy to step out of your comfort zone, force yourself to do something that feels uncomfortable. She says with practice, you can train your brain to think differently. When you give up those self-limiting beliefs, you'll be better equipped to reach your greatest potential. That's all according to Amy Marin. She's the best-selling author of the book 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about negative thoughts and the impact on stress. You're not going to want to miss this. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. The show is My Strategy. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, and I'm your host, John M. Hawkins. Today we're talking about thoughts and how they can become a reality, how thoughts can impact our reality. We're talking about the positive and negative thoughts and how they can impact stress. Right before the break, we were talking about how your thoughts become a reality. In these uncertain times, we can become single-focused on what's going on in the world. And in this segment, I want to talk a little bit about the impact of those negative thoughts and how they can increase our stress. I have an article here from the staff, the Mayo Clinic staff at the Mayo Clinic. It says, positive thinking, stop negative self-talk to reduce your stress. How positive thinking helps with stress management and can even improve your health. practice overcoming negative self-talk. They also provide lots of examples. They start out by saying, is your glass half empty or half full? How you answer this age-old question about positive thinking may reflect your outlook on life, your attitude towards yourself, and whether you're optimistic or pessimistic. And it may even impact your health. Indeed, some studies show that personality traits such as optimism and pessimism can affect many areas of your health and well-being. The positive thinking that usually comes with the optimism is a key part of effective stress management. And effective stress management is associated with many health benefits. If you tend to be pessimistic, don't despair. You can learn positive thinking skills. Understanding positive thinking and self-talk. Positive thinking doesn't mean you keep your head in the sand and ignore life's less pleasant situations. Positive thinking just means that you approach unpleasantness in a more positive and productive way. You think the best is going to happen, not the worst. And in this current time, it is very difficult to think about what is positive. But we're going to continue on and see if there's a way we can think a little bit more positive. The article goes on to say positive thinking often starts with self-talk. Self-talk is an endless stream of unspoken thoughts that run through your head. These automatic thoughts can be positive or negative. Some of your self-talk comes from logic and reason. Other self-talk may arise from misconceptions that you create because of the lack of information. Not too informed here. If the thoughts that run through your head are mostly negative, your outlook is likely to be more pessimistic. If your thoughts are more positive, you're likely to be an optimist, someone who practices positive thinking. I don't know, as I think about that, all the thoughts that go through my head on a daily basis, I don't know if I've been counting whether it's a negative thought or a positive thought, but this does put a good perspective in place on how we could potentially quantify, are we a negative, pessimistic person or are we an optimist? And I know there's no way for us to calculate it, but it is a good little mental exercise, I think, to go through as you go through your day. What am I focusing on? Am I pulling up articles about doom, gloom, despair? Am I pulling up articles about positive? How do I improve? And all of this can have a direct impact on whether or not we're an optimist or a pessimist. It says here that there are health benefits of positive thinking. Researchers continue to explore the effects of positive thinking and optimism on health. Health benefits that positive thinking may provide include increased lifespan. Now, this is all according to the Mayo Clinic. I didn't write this. Lower rates of depression, lower levels of distress, greater resistance to the common cold, better psychological and physical well-being, better cardiovascular health and reduce risk from death from cardiovascular disease, better coping skills during hardships and time of stress. So they're saying here that there's lots of positive benefits, but they do go on to say it's unclear why people who engage in positive thinking experience these health benefits. They say one theory is that having a positive outlook enables you to cope better with stressful situation, which reduces the harmful effects of the stress on your body. That makes sense. If you're stressed and your body's stressed and you don't have a way to cope with it, where is all of that stress going to go? It is going to go into your body, and you are going to have negative impacts to your body as a result of it. It's thought that the positive and optimistic people tend to live healthier life cycle. I'm saying it's also a thought that maybe they tend to live a healthier life cycle. Maybe they get more physical activity, follow a healthier diet, and don't smoke or drink alcohol in excess. So definitely the Mayo Clinic is saying that there's lots and lots of benefits. They're not exactly sure why people who think more positively are healthier, but based on their research, they are. So they say identify negative thinking. Filtering. Number one, you magnify the negative impacts of a situation and filter out all the positive ones. For example, if you had a great day at work, you completed your tasks ahead of time, were complimented for doing such a speedy job and thorough job, but that evening you go home and focus on your plan to do even more tasks and forget about the compliments that you received. That's definitely something that I've done from time to time. Personalizing. When something bad occurs, you automatically blame yourself. For example, you hear that an event out with friends is canceled, and you assume that the change in plans is because no one wanted to be around you. Catastrophizing, if I could say that. You automatically anticipate the worst. The drive-through coffee shop gets your order wrong, and you automatically think that the rest of your day will be a disaster. Polarizing. You see things only as either good or bad. There is no middle ground. You feel that you have to be perfect, and if you're not, then you're a total failure. So they go on to talk about some of the things that we can do to focus on positive thinking and how focusing on the positive can really help us. Things like identify areas to change, check yourself, be open to humor, follow a healthy lifestyle, surround yourself with positive people, practice positive self-talk. I also go through and give some examples of how we could put it into practice. A negative self-talk would be, I've never done it before. Positive is, it's an opportunity to learn. Or you might say, it's too complicated. Better to say, I'll tackle it from a different angle. You're listening to My Strategy. I am your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about how thinking about your thoughts can create a great life. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this edition of My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Right before the break, we were talking about how negative thoughts can increase stress. We talked a little bit about an article from the Mayo Clinic, the staff writers there, on how stress can negatively impact your physical well-being. In this segment, I want to talk about how thinking about your thoughts can create a great life. Before we do that, we'd love to get your thoughts. Send an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com. That's talk@johnmhawkins.com. If you send that in, we'd love to hear from you on what your thoughts are with regard to thoughts becoming a reality. Send us a tip or a trick. Also, check our website at johnmhawkins.com or Twitter at HawkinsJohn for any of the latest giveaways. All right, so in this segment, we're talking about how thinking about your thoughts can create a great life. So hopefully we've established already that how thoughts do become a reality, how negative thoughts can increase stress. So I want to talk a little bit about how we can create a great life, a great new beginning after this global pandemic, hopefully, so that we can all be as successful as we can. And I've got an article here by Lee Collin. He's the founder of the L Group. He's got an article here that says how thinking about your thoughts can create a great life. Our thoughts create words, and our words create worlds. Lee says the greatest form of knowledge is knowing yourself. Knowing yourself starts with knowing your thoughts. Your mindset is nothing more than a compilation of your thoughts. Your thoughts have incredible power to shape your life and the lives of others because your thoughts and interpretations of circumstances directly influence your beliefs and ultimately your actions. Lee goes on to say, Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or cannot, you are right. In other words, what you think is what you get. That is why it's critical that you know your thoughts. I think there's a lot of wisdom here from what Henry Ford said. Whether you think you can or you cannot. Pretty simple. Are you the optimist who thinks you can do something, or are you the pessimist who think you cannot do it? He goes on to say, you draw into your life what you constantly think about being good or bad. And, you know, this is one of the reasons why I'm focusing on this subject this week. Because what we think about, what we talk about, what we do on a daily basis is who we become. If you go to the gym every morning for 2 hours and work out, and you do that consistently, and you're doing perfect practice and training and proper training, over time, you are going to get in better shape. Over time, you are going to go from, if you weren't somebody who was fit, to somebody who is fit, right? You've changed your thoughts, you've changed your actions, and now you are focusing on this new activity, which is going to the gym for 2 hours, and you're doing it on a consistent basis. The reason why I want to talk about this today is we're in a pandemic, people, and our entire normal has shifted. Instead of, going out and being social and talking to people, everything is stopped. And so we don't want to get into this habit of, well, this is the new norm, this is the new reality, there's nothing I can do, because it's not a good outcome. It's not a good place to be. So that's why this week I want us to start thinking about this from a different perspective. We need to figure out and start thinking about what the future is going to hold. We need to start thinking about how are we going to come out of this stronger. There is a lesson to be learned in all of this. And focusing on the news, focusing on the deaths, focusing on all that negativity really is going to shape us, and we are going to just start focusing on that as opposed to the opportunity that might be there for us. Most of us are going to make it through this. And how can we prepare ourselves so that when we do come out, we are stronger, better, faster? It's like going to the gym for the 2 hours every day. We now need to start thinking about the opportunity we have to slow down our lives, to do some self-reflection, and to get some good thoughts. The author goes on to say, if you're always thinking about why you can't seem to get a break or the next shoe will drop in your relationships, or why you don't get as much recognition about your colleague, then you're programming your mind and those around you to turn these thoughts into reality. Negative thoughts are landmines along the pathway to being your best. Fortunately, the reverse is also true. If you consistently and intentionally nurture positive thoughts and expectations, you paint a picture of the future of success on the walls of your mind. I like that imagery, the walls of your mind. It's also kind of a scary thought. I would hate to see what the walls of my mind would look like, but I've got a pretty good visual picture of my cranium being empty on the inside with whiteboard all around it, and just art and pictures and words scattered everywhere. But I guess that's a good image, right? What would the walls of your mind look like? And if they are cluttered, if you do have all these writings and bad thoughts and negative thoughts, what if you thought about your mind and had a visual picture of it, and then you went in there with an eraser and just erased the mind so that you had a blank, clean slate to start with? And with that clean slate, you now have the opportunity to start putting up positive messages, putting up what it is you want to become, what it is you are going to be focusing on, so that in the next 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you do become what it is you're thinking about today. Many times you've heard the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Well, when's the next best time? Right now. And that's what we need to start thinking about, is how can we start to shift our thoughts so that we can. And he says here, the good news is that you're in control of what you think. No one else has the power like you do. You're the conductor of your own thoughts. And it is time for you to start forming that positive mindset, that positive image. Start to write the future on those walls in your mind. You're listening to My Strategy. I am your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of doing one thing. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm John M. Hawkins. The show is My Strategy, and we're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Well, if you're just joining us, happy Saturday. Glad you could join us. If you're on the live show, which is on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, or if you're listening on a podcast, hello as well. We'd love to get your thoughts to the show, so you can call us at our studio number at 866-451-1451. Or send an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com. That's talk@johnmhawkins.com. This week we're talking about thoughts becoming a reality. In this episode, I'm talking about how our thoughts impact our reality. We're discussing the impact of negative thoughts and stress, how proper thinking can help. We're talking also about how we can put together a strategy for you so that you can create a great outcome. Right before the break, we were talking about how thinking about your thoughts can create a great life, which I think all of us want to have a great life. I know I do, and I hope you do as well. But having a great life and getting there are two different things. Now, this show is all about personal development and strategy. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about an article that I found here by Andrew O'Connell. It's the pros and cons of doing one thing at a time. And the reason I want to talk about this subject at this time, we've talked about how your thoughts become a reality. Negative thoughts can increase stress, how you can build this beautiful life. But if you don't have all the tools you need to start working on this initiative, on this activity, I feel I'm doing you a disservice. And I've done shows on serial thinking and parallel thinking, and we might do one next week to continue this topic because I think it's important. Right now you're in a situation where your new normal is staying at home, social isolation. I've talked about how you can have all these great positive thoughts, but if you don't change how you think, if you don't change and if I don't give you the tools to be able to do this, I'm setting you up for failure. So I want to talk a little bit about this and give you some ideas on how to think about this. So Andrew wrote this article. He says, the idea that it's better to finish your tasks in a sequence than to jump around from one to another is very hard to accept. And this is from the writer. It says, it goes against my ingrained task juggling habit, which I believe to be is why I can hit my multiple ever-challenging deadlines. It says researchers Decio Covelli, Andrea Ichino, and Nicola Persico, and they're from very prestigious universities, have shown why sequential approach to completing tasks makes a lot of sense. They say, here's the logic. Let's say 6 people simultaneously give you 6 similar 3-day ASAP tasks, and you try and juggle them, spending a half day on each one in turn. Although you make good progress on each one as the days go by, you don't complete any of the tasks until day 16. When you finally finish the first 2, you finish the next 2 on day 17 and wrap up the last one on day 18. But all of the assigners have to wait a long time, and they're annoyed with you because you took so long. So if you attack the task sequentially, you'll finish the first one in 3 days, the second in 6 days, the third in 9, and so on. In fact, you've completed 5 of the 6 earlier than if you'd been working on them in parallel, because the 6th one wraps up at the end of the day. So at least 2 of the assigners were extremely happy and impressed, and overall 5 of the 6 assigners are happier than if you had juggled their tasks. So they published this theoretical paper on the idea, And they went on to study a compelling real-world example where they studied Italian judges who typically get more cases than they can easily handle. Some of the judges were heavy taskers, some were not. And an analysis of the caseload of this admittingly small sample suggests that there is really an advantage to completing tasks in sequence. The heavy jugglers took longer to complete their portfolios and were less likely to complete their cases in a given time period. They've got this great little chart here that shows the jugglers and how they did it. And if you're on YouTube, you can see it. I shared it. But does that mean that but here the author's saying, but does that mean I should change my habits and plow through these tasks sequentially? And so the author says they've been struggling with this question. They don't know the answer. So when he spoke to the researcher about this, he acknowledged that the findings are counterintuitive. Even very smart people can be confused about this stuff, Persico said. His father, a theoretical physicist, was taken back by it and didn't quite believe it. As for Persico himself, the research has challenged his way of working, making him conscious of the value of finishing tasks sequentially. Now he tries to work on one research project, or at the most two at a time. He wishes he'd known about this when he was turning out papers to beat the clock at the University of Pennsylvania. He says, I could have been more productive. He goes on and talks about some of the benefits of thinking things serially. The article also goes on to talk about doing things in parallel. Now, the reason I'm talking about, and the benefits there's definitely benefits there, but the reason I want to talk about the serial nature of this is with this social distancing, with not having, in some cases, not being able to work, your task load has dropped tremendously. It has dropped so much so that you're not in a situation where you're forced to balance everything. So as we try and get through this and we try and think about strategies and tactics, maybe there's a little bit of light here for us. Where now that been given the opportunity not to have so many competing tasks, let's try and focus on a few things that we want to get completed over this time. Let's try to accomplish those goals, and that's going to help us build to get to a point where we can accomplish bigger and bigger goals and set us up for success. So we'll talk more about that at a later point in time. But yeah, the pros and cons of doing one thing at a time. You're listening to My Strategy. I am your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about developing your strategy. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm John M. Hawkins. The show is My Strategy, and we're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Right before the break, we were talking about the pros of doing things one at a time, so serial thinking. In this segment, I want to talk a little bit about developing your strategy. Weekly, we talk about our strategy, and there's really 5 steps to creating our strategy. It's the awareness that there's some vision or goals or something we want to accomplish. The assess and analyze. By assessing the situation and doing some analysis, we can figure out the steps we need to take. Strategize and plan with some course of defined actions. We can start to determine which ones are going to help us get closer to that goal. We then implement our plan. Start these new, exciting tactics, activities, challenges, behaviors, mindset change, whatever it is. And then we need some support and evaluation. So right before the break, like I said, we were talking about, serially and doing things one at a time. We've been given a great opportunity for many of us where we do have some downtime, and we now really have the ability to focus on some of those projects we want to do. And from a personal development perspective, you might be, multitasking and trying to do many things, and you're not working on yourself. So let's spend a little bit of time doing that. And so this week we're talking about, our thoughts becoming reality. And one of the things I think that's important is for us to, and I've done podcasts before on this, but think about the importance, the power, the art of being focused. And by focused, I mean you are laser focused on what you know what your goals are. You know exactly where you are from a current situation perspective. You know what you need to be focusing on and doing to be able to get to a point where you are successful. So I've got an article here by Dr. Jim Taylor, and he says, focus is the gateway to business success. Focus doesn't get the respect it deserves in the business world. We hear a lot about motivation, stress, emotions, leadership, and team culture, and not too much attention is paid to the role that plays in your ability to be productive. And in this time, think about it, right? We do get focused on stress, our emotions, the leadership, the team culture. What Jim's telling us, and what I think is important, is at some point we do need to just focus. He says, let's first start off with what focus is. Simply put, focus involves the ability to pay attention to things that will help and avoid distractions that will hurt your work efforts. For example, if you finish a report, you need to focus on the relevant information and analysis that will comprise the report. You must also avoid any typical distractions such as emails, being hungry or tired, or the people around you. He says you cannot think if you are not focused. Focus is so important because it's the gateway to all thinking, perception, memory, learning, reasoning, problem solving, and decision making. Without good focus, all aspects of your ability to think will suffer. With focus, you won't be as effective in your work, but you won't be also, but you will be maximally efficient without good focus, because every time your mind wanders from your work, you're wasting time. Finally, you won't be as productive as you can because your work output will not be of the highest quality and will take you longer to do. So he goes on to talk about focus and the importance of it. He says, here it's really simple. If you can't focus effectively, you can't think effectively. And if you can't think effectively, you definitely can't produce the quality of work necessary to be successful. From this perspective, it's not difficult to see why focus is such an essential tool for your business. So in our case, we're trying to really change our thoughts. We want our thoughts to become the reality. We've talked about the benefits of it. We know that there's a benefit by focusing on positive. There's a health benefit. We know that we can accomplish great things if we do that. We know that if we do things serially, there's some benefits to getting those done. And in fact, one study suggests that you're more effective than those multitaskers who try and do many things in parallel. Now, there's a converse side to that as well. But right now, as I've talked about, we've got this great opportunity. We've got this opportunity to start to accomplish something for ourselves. When else are you going, when else have you said, oh, I just wish I didn't have to go to this event, or I wish I didn't have to go pick up the kids from school, or I've got to go take them to their soccer practice. So now's the great time. Now's a great time to really focus on what it is we're trying to accomplish. Really try and figure out a way for us to increase the level of focus so that we can focus on those initiatives. He says the key question then is, how can you ensure you have the ideal focus at work that will result in positive and efficient outputs? And so he gives us a few steps. So number one, declutter your mind. He says he's sure that you would agree that a cluttered mind can't focus. It's like that whiteboard inside of my head. It might be written with all sorts of things on the inside, but if I could clean it off, that's going to help me, prepare me, so that when I am starting to figure out what to focus on, I can write those on the insides of my whiteboard in my brain, as opposed to just thinking about all the things that are there. And this is a very key thing. Declutter your mind, but also I think it's important to declutter your work environment, to declutter your desk, So if you are in a situation where you're looking for better focus, get into a good workspace. If you're at home and you're having a hard time, for example, clean one of your rooms, and that's going to help you start to get into that mindset where you have the opportunity to put new thoughts in. If you're in a cluttered, familiar workspace, it is going to be harder for you to focus. So he goes on to talk about the 4 Ps and other things that we can do. But I think the net from this is, if you're having a hard time focus, find a place in your house, clean that place in your house, declutter it so that you have the ability to think, you have the ability to start, coming up with some new ideas, shape your thoughts. Once you've got that clean workspace where you can go to that now has new energy, you can start to really focus on what we're talking about this week, and that is creating the right thoughts so that we can lead to great outcomes. You're listening to My Strategy. I am your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about putting your plan in place. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm John M. Hawkins. The show is My Strategy. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're very happy to be here with you today. My Strategy episodes are on Saturdays. They're live at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. In case you've missed this broadcast, you can listen on iHeartRadio and Apple iTunes. Or if you'd like to have something covered in the show, send an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com. Or give me a call at 844-MY-STRATEGY. That's 1-844-MY-STRATEGY. This week we've been talking about thoughts becoming a reality. We've been talking about how thoughts impact our reality. We've been talking about the impact of negative thoughts and stress, how proper thinking can help us, the strategy of doing one thing at a time, and tips for developing your strategy. So how do your thoughts become a reality? Well, in these uncertain times, we can become single-focused. We think about just one thing, and that is what is in front of us. And there's a clear link between our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior. So as we start to think about negative things, we might end up spiraling and going into a negative direction. So we talked a little bit about how we need to challenge our conclusion, change our conclusion, come up with a new outcome, something that is positive. We need to do this because we found that negative thoughts will increase our stress. Understanding how the positive thinking and self-talk can help put us into a positive mindset actually has lots of health benefits, according to the Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic said that it can help reduce stress and heart disease and help you with weight and other negative things as well. So from that perspective, there is positive health benefits to being a positive thinker. We also learned that there's ways for us to start creating a good life by thinking positively. Knowing yourself means knowing your thoughts. You draw into your life what you constantly think about. Negative thoughts can become the landmine. So if you had inside your brain the walls were covered with a whiteboard, and on that whiteboard, it had all the negative things that you think about on a daily basis, all the negative things that have happened in your life. Over time, when you look and think in that whiteboard in your mind, all you're going to see is negativity. And that's not healthy. It's not how we want to live. So go in there and clean out all of that whiteboard. Clean it to the point where it's brand new and fresh. Then what I want you to start to do is think about those things we can focus on. Think about the positive things, the future, what it is we want to become, what it is we want to do, and start writing those on that mental whiteboard in your brain. And as you do that, I want you to start thinking about the ways of doing things. In the past, you might have been a good multitasker because you had so many things to do. You could juggle, you could get things done. Unfortunately, your new normal is not to have all those things. So it is possible to do things serially as well. Get one thing done, do it well, move on to the next. Start thinking about that approach. We then talked a little bit about developing your strategy and how we need to start to really come to a point where we can focus on what it is we're trying to do. But making all these changes does mean that we have to break our bad habits, which means we need to be aware of them. We also need to find a way to prioritize our goals and objectives. We need to commit to our goals and objectives, because if we don't commit to our goals and objectives, we are not going to challenge the conclusion, and you will not get to that new outcome. And all of this is possible by going through the process, gaining clarity. And this clarity is going to help open up our mind so that we know what it is that we have to do. The more clarity you have, the more detail of a picture, of an image, the better chances you have of putting together a strategy and accomplishing those goals. That's all the time we have for this week. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.